Okay.
How would you describe the core message behind the band's name Alt Rite, and how does it connect to the themes you explore in your music?
Well, that's a really good question to start off with because um, Alt Right originally was not intended to be a band at all. Um, it was just a musical project, an outlet for me at the time to express and explore different kinds of music at that time via Facebook. And it was more of like a public library of sorts. I would upload music of me playing guitar or doing covers of 𝓑𝓻𝓾𝓽 or Dark Throne. And at that time, uh, I had someone make a comment saying, "Oh, all you're playing is 𝓑𝓻𝓾 and fascist metal bands. You should just call this alt right band page. Like you're playing nothing but alt right music." So it was kind of a tongue in cheek um, joke in the initial beginning, and over the next year, I began focusing more on my writing, and I just continued using the name Alt Right simply just out of, you know, for no reason at all, other than it was just a placeholder. And then as my relationship and my faith grew in Jesus Christ, um, the name kind of took a different meaning because now it's no longer just a nomenclature or it's not just a placeholder now. And alt right can be an alternative to rights of Catholicism. Like you have your Western right, your Eastern right, and you have your alt right.
Was
So,
that the end of, oh yeah, I'm sorry. That was the end of your response, but you're gonna say more, correct?
no, yeah, that's all.
Okay, alrighty. Okay, and then for my next question, your music combines elements of black metal with themes like Catholicism, anti-Semitism, and Mexican nationalism. How do you reconcile these? I'm sorry. How do you reconcile these sometimes controversial ideas with your identity as musicians?
Well, first, I can only speak for myself. And in regards to anti Semitism, what it means literally, the term anti Semite means against Shem and his descendants. And I'm not sure if you know this, but you don't need to be Jewish to be Semitic. There are people who are of the Catholic faith, there are people who are Muslim, and there are even people who are just atheist who are Semitic. So the term anti Semite was created to pretty much demonize anyone who spoke out against any kind of Jewish rhetoric in a way to demonize them and devalue their opinion. And so when it comes down to being anti Semitic, I don't necessarily claim to be anti Semitic because that term is very ignorant and misleading. I refer to the band and myself as pro Christ in lieu of being anti Semitic. As far as our identity goes, as being, of Mexican heritage, a lot of what makes our identity is our language, our religion, and our mestizaje, our blood mixture, whether it's, South American, you know, Mexican or some other North American. These are the three ingredients that make someone, a Hispanic, Hispanismo. And, we're, as a band, we're really prideful towards that. And that's something that we just, highlight in our music, and trying to get other people who are Hispanic to understand that these are the key ingredients as to who we are as people. And without any of these ingredients, there's something that's missing. Because without Christ, there pretty much wouldn't be a Hispanic race via, the Americas. So all these things tie in together as far as the anti-Semitism goes. Um, if you're a Christian or a Catholic, you're going to be labeled anti-Semitic anyways, just because of what you believe.
Well, that was very interesting. So much information.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it makes sense though. Makes a lot of
right.
sense. Okay, so for my next question, the album Cum Nimis Absurdum, I hope I said that right,
Yeah,
was released in 2023. What was the main inspiration behind this full-length album, and how does it reflect your evolution as a band?
it was necessity. There was a demand for the album, and that's why it was created. Initially, like I said, the Alt Rite was not supposed to be a functioning band whatsoever. It was just supposed to be not even a solo project. It was just me playing guitar, noodling around, and you know, uploading that on the internet just for fun. However, over the years, I guess I gained a little bit of a cult following, and people were always commenting, "When's the next song going to come out? Or are you going to put out a demo? I mean, what's going to happen?" And I never answered anybody because it wasn't any of their business because it wasn't anything serious to me at the time. However, there was a show going around in 2022 called Rise of the Black Sun. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
I don't think so. Can you tell me
okay,
more?
yeah, it was a show and it was a big festival, and it was being put together by Black Knights Productions. And that's 𝓑𝓻𝓾𝓽𝓪's production company, if you will, from 𝓑𝓻𝓾𝓽, and he acquaintance of mine at the time, and he got Nocturne on the bill, which is a very big band, and he got other bands like Withermoon and Sicarius, and I think Cult of Odium was going to be playing too. And a few months later, I guess some of these bands got um, the idea, or pretty much found out that Nocturne was, I guess, one of these, anti-Semitic bands. So they all dropped off the bill, about like 8 or 9 different bands.
Wow, that's
And
a lot.
yeah, yeah. So the festival was pretty much, it was done in everyone's eyes, because no one wanted to affiliate themselves with the band like Nocturne at that point. And I think that just speaks more on the bands that dropped initially, because how do you not know who you're playing with? I mean, if there's a band as controversial as Nocturne and you say, okay, we'll be on the show, to only drop months later, I think that only speaks more on the individuals involved that dropped than it does the controversial band.
True,
But
true.
what happened was, 𝓑𝓻𝓾𝓽, he contacted me, and we were talking quite a bit at that time. And I had a band at that point because I was just getting ready to record a demo because that's what people were asking for. And he said, "Would you please, you know, play the show? And maybe we could get some more bands on, and the festival can go on." And I told him, hey, if you do this show, you are drawing a line in the sand by saying, fuck you, you dropped off the show, and now I'm going to bring Alt Right to open for Nocturne and make it a political statement. Even though that's not what he intended to do, that's what it was going to look like to everybody else, because naturally everyone drops because of the controversy, and then you bring my band on to the bill. It's already controversial as it is. It's just throwing gasoline on the fire. So once we played, we didn't have any demos or recorded music at all. So we just went up there. It was our first show. We opened for Nocturne, and we opened for Blue Eyed Devils, and we opened for Crucifier. And it was a great show. We had a really good time, and we had a really good turnout. And everyone was, well, not everyone, but there was a good amount of people that were asking for music. And unfortunately, we had nothing to deliver. So right away, I had to get started on writing the album out of necessity because there was a demand for it. And that's why the album was more or less created, was to satisfy this following that we had now garnered from playing live.
That's awesome. And how long? after the show did it take you to release your album?
It was about I get see it happened in October. The album released in May, so it was about 8 months.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and
Yeah,
the people got what they wanted, so that's good.
yeah. A lot of people were really happy with the album. I was happy with the album, and so was the label as well.
That's amazing. For
Yeah.
my next question, how do
hmm
you view the relationship between black metal's typical nihilistic and anti-religious themes and the Catholicism that you often reference in your lyrics?
Well, black metal has always been about going to war with what's the norm. When black metal was first initially created in the second wave or first wave, whatever, in Norway, it was very much about being prideful of who you are. And, they were Norwegian, so they were proud of that. And there was also darker elements of the lyrics and all that. But nowadays, black metal itself is pretty much a parody, and it's very bland, unimaginative, and the lyrics oftentimes and the themes are very cookie cutter. With your satanic, anti-God, and stuff like that.
The
And
typical stuff.
yeah, the typical stuff. And these themes seem to be written by kids with ignorant notions of what is the truth. And now with alt right, what we're doing is highlighting what is the actual truth. Black metal has always been a dark music by nature, and there's plenty of stories in the Bible with dark themes and macabre aesthetics. There's a lot of scenes of torture in the Bible. Jesus' story itself is completely tragic if you look at it from his mother's perspective. And all of the apostles, with the exception of one, they were all martyred in horrific ways. From being skinned alive to being stoned to death to being crucified invertedly. Or submerged in boiling oil. These are all themes that are highlighted in alt right, and that we will continue to highlight because um, not it's not necessarily driven by a sense of evangelism. In a way it is, but we're going about it a different way because we're not knocking on people's doors saying, have you found Christ or anything. We're just highlighting the aspects of our religion that um, can be easily reflected through dark and harsh music. As an artist and a musician, I always feel that it's appropriate for dark and harsh music to have lyrics that reflect that. You wouldn't want to be singing a song about like smelling roses and whatnot and how happy you are, and you
Hmm,
got like these
true.
dark, heavy riffs.
Oh yeah. That's why whatever you create, you represent it in your music along with the lyrics and everything.
Absolutely.
Okay. And for my next question, anti-Semitism is a difficult and sensitive subject. How do you approach this subject matter in your music, and what do you hope to convey to listeners through these lyrics?
Well, okay, so first off, if you're not Catholic, you're Jewish. Okay. There's a lot of metalheads that are against this whole woke agenda or wokeness. And it's really prevalent in the metal scene. We'll see a lot of inclusivity or calls for inclusivity. And there's not really like any gatekeeping anymore. So you'll get a lot of silly things happening in the scene that we normally wouldn't have seen when we were growing up, especially, someone at my age. You'd get your ass kicked, typically. But a lot of these people who are against the woke agenda and against all of that, their actions show that they're very much part of the degeneracy that they claim to detest. And with alt right, we're highlighting that. There's pretty much two scenes right now on the black metal scene here, and you got your RABMs, and then you got your NSBMs crowd, and then you got whatever is in the middle, just sitting on the fence. Your safe bands. And, a lot of the bands that are in the NSBM scene, individuals, they're just as degenerative as those as they judge on the left. And in alt right, we highlight that and we point that out. So we're equally hated from those on the left and those from the right. And that's pretty much the message that we're conveying, is that if you really want to be anti-woke, yet refuse to accept Christ as our savior, then you're lost.
Very interesting. I like that. This is a very interesting interview.
No, I'm glad. I'm happy to hear that.
For my next question, with black metal being, oh, I'm sorry, with black metal often being a space for rebellion against mainstream norms, how do you see your work fitting into or challenging the traditional black metal scene?
Well, we kind of touched on this in the last couple questions, but
Yeah. Do you want to say anything else?
just to reiterate, our music and lyrics fit just fine in regards to challenging the mainstream norm, especially in black metal as it is today. In many ways, following Jesus Christ is the most black metal thing you can do. Sacrificing yourself and saying no to temptation and things that are the norm and that are degenerative.
That's true. That makes a lot of sense. For my next question, in interviews and public statements, the idea of Orthodox traditionalism is often brought up. Could you elaborate on what this concept means to you and how does it influence the band's music and aesthetic?
Well, yeah, I've seen that actually, and orthodoxy itself, orthodoxy refers to the schismatic belief in Christianity that and that they don't believe in the Pope. That's really what the difference is between us and Orthodox people who are Eastern Orthodox Christians, and that's not something that we're affiliated with because we're Catholics. So people think we're. I think people might think that we're Orthodox simply just by looking at our aesthetic. I have a black hood on. I wear black at our shows. All of us wear black, but we don't believe in orthodoxy, and it's not something that we promote either because there's only one true church, and that's the Church of Jesus Christ. The Catholic Church.
Interesting. Okay. My next question, how do you respond to criticism that sees the band's themes as potentially harmful or promoting ideologies that many would find offensive? Do you feel your work is misunderstood?
Um, well, we're a pro-Christ band, so if anyone's saying that we're promoting harmful ideologies, that person is probably Jewish or someone who is vehemently against the Catholic Church. Um, I can't.
Anti-religious?
Yeah, anti-religious, specific. Because they usually don't have a problem with someone who's Buddhist or someone who's Hindu or Islamic
Muslim?
Muslim.
Yeah,
It's usually the attack is always on Christ, and that's because
Jesus
Christ,
Christ.
yeah, Jesus Christ is the one true God. Um, as far as it being harmful and people thinking it's a harmful ideology, um, that we're promoting stuff through our music that is harmful, I only have one thing to say, and that's look up Andres Serrano. He's an artist, and he put out a piece of art in 1987 called Piss Christ. And what it is a crucifix with Jesus Christ on it in a jar filled up with urine. So when people tell me like, "Oh, you're promoting a hateful ideology and your art is, hateful and all that," well, this is what I grew up with. The Fear Factory song, Piss Christ is directly referencing that piece of art. And when I was, just a young guy, young kid, and I'm looking up the lyrics for that, and that's the first thing I see. It's really offensive to find that, and to see that it won an award. you know, is kind of baffling. Yet someone like myself, when, you turn the tables around and dish it back to them, we get banned. You know what I mean? So how's that for offensive and harmful? And it's, at the end of the day, it's all freedom of expression. And if you don't recognize our God, then we can't recognize the Jewish people, plain and simple.
True. And then there's a lot of haters out there. And then
Absolutely.
you mentioned Jewish people, so would you say that they're like your main haters that are like going against like your music?
Absolutely. Because whoever hates us, the world hated Christ first. So because we defend Christ, naturally, we're going to be hated as well.
True. That makes sense. Okay, so for my next question, you've chosen to align yourselves with Myth of Darkness Records. How does this label align with your musical and ideological vision, and and what role do you think they play in the wider black metal community?
Well, Myth of Darkness gave us an opportunity to have our music put out into a physical form for our fans and to expose us to a much larger audience during that time. Myth of Darkness was in charge of the show, more or less the first show that we played with 𝓑𝓻𝓾𝓽. They were helping promote it, The Rise of the Black Sun. And I owe a lot to Myth of Darkness for showcasing us on their YouTube channel, Hipster Black Metal, and having us play and open for these great bands, legendary bands. Like I said before, it was a great honor to be able to open for these bands on our first show, and not a lot of bands get to say that. Um, he makes it possible for a lot of up and coming bands to get a start. By whether it's by making CDs and jewel cases and inlays for them, or cassettes, or by sharing their flyers on his social medias. All that stuff is instrumental in facilitating growth in the black metal scene here in Southern California and in the United States in general too. Because I mean, he could be signing bands from Arizona and Nevada. I know he has, um, Native American Indian bands on his label as well, and they're fantastic. You should give them a listen to if you ever get a chance. Go through Myth of Darkness's band lineup. All the bands on there have bring something to the table.
You could send me like links to the music and I'll definitely check it out.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that would be great. Did I interrupt your response or were you gonna say more? Just wondering.
No, there's really not much else to say other than I thank Myth of
Okay.
Darkness for the opportunity and showcasing us and continuing to help support and press our next album that I'm currently working on right now.
Amazing. And for my next question, what do you see as the future of Alt Rite? Are there any new musical directions, collaborations, or thematic explorations you're planning for your new project? And this would be my final question.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of um, things in the future for alt right. One of which is I plan to bring in victims of detransitioning. So a lot of people in the scene, are actively, like I said, against the LGBT community and those transitioning from one sex to another. And a lot of times it's very hateful. What I plan to do with our next record is highlight the detransition of that and the healing of that and the harshness of having to detransition with um, the notion that you're probably never going to be able to reproduce. Your body is mutilated and you can never go back to who you were before. And a lot of these people are suffering, their voices are not heard. And oftentimes I feel like the judgment and the anger towards the LGBT community overshadows these people's stories and their voices because these people do exist And, someone might have decided to do something when they were younger, like when they were 13 or 12, and go on hormone blockers. And now they're 19, 20 years old now. And maybe now they're, older, wiser, and they have second thoughts, but it's too late for them, and a lot of people like to make fun of the fact that 50% of those who are transsexuals end up killing themselves. And it's not funny. We're all children of God. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what decisions we have made in the past. We're all God's children. There's a saying in Catholicism that every sinner has a future and every saint has a past. And I don't think that doesn't apply to anyone. That applies to every single person, whether they're black, white, Jewish, transsexual, bisexual, lesbian. It's just you need to repent and acknowledge your sins and be willing to change and accept that. And I think there's a good message in there by highlighting that in music and giving maybe some of these people who might have a musical background an outlet to and a platform to get their message out there, because I feel it's very important to highlight this.
Would say that's so true because I know a lot of them at that time they feel pressured or they feel that that's something that they needed to do, but once they get older, I'm sure they regret it, but obviously they can't go back in time and undo what they've done to themselves. And
Right.
I've seen some stuff about it online where it's a lot of like a good amount of the ones that actually went public with their story, they actually regretted their decision, but it's too late because they already mutilated themselves, you know?
Yeah,
So
it's
I
absolutely
like,
tragic.
yeah, yeah, it's so tragic. So I find it very interesting that you are that you will represent them like talk like in your music. And I like that.
Thank you.
But yeah. Okay. I'm gonna start recording now.